When you hear the name Adolf Hitler, it just triggers something, right? An immediate sort of visceral reaction.
Absolutely.
We instantly think of the Holocaust, the sheer devastation of World War II. I mean, the darkest chapter of modern history.
It is.
But here's the paradox that we're really going to dive into today. The man who engineered all of this catastrophic destruction,
Yeah.
he started as a total nobody.
The failed artist, yeah. Painting cheap postcards in Vienna just to get by.
Exactly. How does that happen?
It's really the story of an overlooked individual who managed to tap into the darkest parts of a broken nation. He weaponized them.
Into a global war machine.
Right. And our deep dive today is that journey. We're tracing his path from that, resentful, anonymous figure to the absolute tyrant. And we have to look at the consequences, the global fallout that literally forced the world to redefine justice.
The scale of it is just, it's hard to summarize. We're talking about an ideology that led to the deaths of, over 50 million people?
At least. And that includes the systematic industrial murder of 6 million Jewish people, along with millions of others who were just deemed undesirable.
So our mission here is to understand how. How did that nobody get that kind of monumental, destructive power?
And we have to start right at the beginning. In the obscurity of Vienna, long before the uniform, long before the podium, that's where the resentment really started to fester.
Right. So segment 1, the seeds of hatred. By the time he's in his early 20s, Hitler is living this lonely, impoverished life, a dropout.
Surviving in these crowded men's shelters, sketching postcards, making just a meager living from these little amateur paintings.
And this poverty, it was compounded by a really profound official humiliation. This detail feels so crucial.
It's everything. He applied not once but twice to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna.
And was rejected both times.
Both times. And for him, this wasn't just a career disappointment. This confirmed his deepest belief that the establishment, the elite, high culture, was actively ignoring him, overlooking and humiliating him.
And what's so fascinating, or maybe terrifying, is how his own personal failures found this perfect cultural petri dish to grow in.
He was in a city that was vibrating with resentment. Vienna at that time was a pressure cooker of, ethnic tension, political paranoia, hypernationalism.
A very toxic atmosphere.
Incredibly toxic. It was the home of Karl Lueger, a hugely successful anti-Semitic politician. Hitler just absorbed all of it. So his personal failures, being poor, being rejected, they just started to merge with this political story that, hey, he wasn't failing, society was failing him.
And certain groups were to blame.
And specific groups were to blame.
You add that to a fractured childhood, a very strict father who he argued with constantly. He was already alienated, already aggressive, and then World War I happens.
And the war, for him, was a kind of salvation. It gave him everything he lacked. Structure, a purpose, that intense camaraderie of the battlefield, the brotherhood.
He finally belonged somewhere.
For the first time, yes, he was a dispatch runner, a dangerous job, but he felt valued. He was part of something bigger than himself.
But then Germany surrenders in 1918, and that purpose is just obliterated.
He's in a military hospital when he hears the news. And he doesn't see it as a military loss. He sees it as a political betrayal, a stab in the back by enemies at home.
That betrayal becomes the fuel.
It becomes the absolute core of the man. He sees the Treaty of Versailles as this national humiliation, and he vows personally to avenge it.
Which sets the stage perfectly for what comes next. Segment 2. Weaponizing chaos. Germany after the war is on its knees.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
The environment he steps back into is one of utter desperation. The Weimar Republic is weak, unstable, and the economy is in ruins.
We've all seen the pictures from 1923, the hyperinflation.
It's hard to even imagine a wheelbarrow full of banknotes just to buy bread. People were starving. There were riots, political violence. It was chaos.
And in that vacuum of despair, Hitler finds his true talent. It isn't art.
It's oration. Raw, theatrical, impassioned oration. He could walk into a beer hall full of angry, desperate men and just channel that collective rage.
And his strategy was so simple.
Brilliantly simple and monstrously effective. He didn't offer complex policy solutions. He just offered enemies.
The Jews, the Marxists, the politicians who signed the treaty.
Exactly. Foreign powers. In a time of such profound suffering, just having a clear target for your anger, well, that was tragically enough.
But his first big move, the beer hall putsch in 23, It fails miserably. He goes to prison. That should have been the end.
For most people, it would have been. But for him, it was a vital moment. He learned a crucial lesson.
Which was?
You can't take power with brute force. You have to destroy the democracy from within, use its own rules against it. And in prison, he writes the blueprint.
Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. And the chilling thing is, it wasn't some secret manifesto. It was published for everyone to read.
He laid it all out.
All of it. The plan for dictatorship, for racial supremacy, for expanding into Europe, and for removing the Jewish people from German life. It was all there.
But the world just dismissed it.
As the ramblings of a frustrated fanatic. No one believed he actually meant every single word. A catastrophic failure of imagination.
And that failure to take him seriously brings us to segment 3. The totalitarian machine. The switch flips in 1933.
January 1933. He becomes chancellor. The conservative elites, they thought they could control him.
That was their biggest mistake.
It was. Within months, democracy was systematically dismantled. The speed is what's so terrifying.
So what were the first steps? How did he solidify control so quickly?
The Reichstag fire.
Yeah.
February 1933. The German parliament building burns down. He immediately blames the communists.
Creates a crisis.
And uses the panic to get President Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree. And just like that, all basic civil liberties are suspended. Freedom of speech, assembly, privacy, gone.
But that wasn't even the fatal blow, was it?
No. The truly fatal step was the Enabling Act a month later. This is where he uses the system. The act legally transferred all lawmaking power from the parliament to Hitler's own cabinet for 4 years.
So he became a dictator by law.
Exactly. Democracy wasn't murdered in the streets. It was suffocated by its own legal process.
And with the legal framework gone, the fear spreads. We see the first concentration camps opening.
Yes, initially for political opponents, communists, socialists, anyone who spoke out. The Gestapo, the secret police, could hunt down anyone.
And the control went beyond just policing, right? It was about controlling culture itself.
A process they called Gleichschaltung, coordination. Every part of German life, the media, the schools, the unions, was brought under Nazi control.
Indoctrination was everywhere. Goebbels and the propaganda machine, the Hitler Youth for Children, the public book burnings. But the most sinister part to me is how it destroyed social trust.
That is essential for a totalitarian state. You have to eliminate trust. Neighbors were encouraged to spy on neighbors. Kids were taught to report their parents.
The whole society became a surveillance network.
Which makes any kind of internal resistance almost impossible.
And this all becomes formalized, this war on identity in 1935 with the Nuremberg Laws.
This is the moment ideology gets baked into the legal structure of the state. These laws revoked the citizenship of Jewish people. They barred them from most jobs. They banned marriage between Jews and non-Jews.
It was the legal stripping away of their entire identity.
Their rights, their personhood, it turned them into permanent legal outsiders in the nation of their birth.
And with Germany now totally controlled, Hitler's gaze turns outward. And that's segment 4. Terror unleashed.
His moves toward war were a series of calculated gambles, all of them violating the Treaty of Versailles, rebuilding the military, marching into the Rhineland, annexing Austria.
And Europe just watched. Why wasn't he stopped?
Appeasement, that's the simple answer. The hope in Britain and France was that if they gave him his, quote, reasonable demands, they could avoid another terrible war.
The Munich Agreement in 1938 being the classic example.
The tragic apex of that policy, yes, handing over part of Czechoslovakia to him, but all it did was tell Hitler that he could keep pushing.
So appeasement was his greatest weapon.
In a way, yes, it emboldened him. And it continued right up to the point of no return. September 1st, 1939, the invasion of Poland.
And that ignites the Second World War.
It does. And initially, his Blitzkrieg, the Lightning War, seemed unstoppable. France fell in 6 weeks. By 1941, he controlled the continent.
But as that military war is raging, the other war, the internal one, escalates from persecution into industrialized murder.
The Holocaust. And we have to be clear, this wasn't a side effect of the war. It was a core objective of the regime from the beginning.
So where did the mass killing officially begin?
It began with the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 41. Special units called the Einsatzgruppen mobile killing squads followed the army.
Their job?
To round up and shoot Jewish civilians, men, women, children, by the hundreds of thousands.
But even that scale wasn't enough for them. Which brings us to the Wannsee Conference.
Yes. January 1942, senior Nazi officials meet to coordinate the details of what they called the final solution. This is the shift from shootings to an industrial system of death.
Hatred transformed into machinery.
Precisely. The construction of the extermination camps. Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor. These places were factories, built for one purpose: the efficient, large-scale murder of human beings in gas chambers.
And the result?
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to comprehend. 6 million Jewish lives extinguished.
And millions of others. Roma people, disabled people, Slavs, political prisoners, homosexual. It was a war on humanity itself. The starkest possible warning of what happens when a modern state industrializes murder.
It's hard to pivot from that, but we have to talk about the collapse. Segment 5. How does this invincible empire just crumble?
Hubris. Hitler makes two fatal strategic mistakes. First, invading the Soviet Union in 1941. That opened up a disastrous two-front war.
And the second?
Declaring war on the United States after Pearl Harbor, bringing the world's greatest industrial power into the fight against him.
The Eastern Front really became the grave of his army. Was there one turning point?
Stalingrad. Without a doubt. The Battle of Stalingrad in 42-43. The surrender of the entire German Sixth Army. It was a staggering defeat, militarily and psychologically. The myth of invincibility was shattered.
And then D-Day in 1944. The Allies landing in Normandy. Now Germany is being squeezed from both sides.
Inexorably. And as defeat becomes a reality, Hitler just spirals into delusion. He's issuing impossible orders to armies that don't exist anymore, firing any general who tells him the truth. Surrender is just not an option for him.
So by April 1945, the final scene is set. Berlin is under siege.
The Russians are in the city. Their artillery is literally shaking the ground above the Führer bunker.
And inside that bunker, his world is just collapsing.
It is. His final days are just paranoia and acts of spite. He marries Eva Braun, dictates this final delusional testament, blaming everyone but himself.
And then, on April 30th, 1945, he commits suicide.
He does. The 1,000-year Reich he promised lasted just 12 years. It ended in a pile of rubble in a bunker beneath Berlin.
The man was gone. But the consequences of his reign were just beginning. The world had to rebuild.
And it's powerful to realize that some of the greatest constructive steps of the 20th century came directly from responding to his destruction.
Like modern international justice.
Absolutely. The Nuremberg trials. They established that leaders are accountable for crimes against humanity. They forced the world to even define the word genocide because we needed a word strong enough for what he had done.
The United Nations was formed out of this, too.
And maybe most importantly for Europe, the institutions that became the European Union. They were specifically created to tie Germany and France together so tightly that another war like this would become functionally impossible.
So the enduring legacy is that realization. That democracy isn't a given, it's fragile, it can fall apart when fear replaces reason.
And when one man is allowed to become more powerful than the people he claims to lead, Hitler's story isn't just history, it's a definitive instruction manual for how a civilization can collapse into barbarism.
He gave us the template.
He did. Exploit suffering, manufacture crises, identify enemies, control information, and then dismantle democratic institutions from the inside, legally.
Which leaves us with a final, and I think provocative thought for you to consider. If that template for tyranny is so clearly laid out in the history books, we have to constantly examine our own world today. What chaos, what suffering, what deep divisions exist right now that an opportunistic, hateful orator might try to weaponize next? That vigilance. That's the only real way to honor the lessons learned from the collapse of 1945.